Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today we'll talk about the 7 mistakes that folks typically make in hiring and firing during uncertain economic times. Now, McKinsey research suggests a multifaceted approach to thinking about attracting talent and retaining talent in uncertain economic times. It found that surprisingly, 40% of workers plan to quit their jobs even as recession fears grow. So what should you do in this context, in the context of this research? What are the things that you should do and what should you avoid? First tip, be greedy. Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. It applies to investing in talent as much as it applies to investing in stocks. So you want to think about talent in uncertain economic times, recession fears, and so on, job cuts. There's going to be better talent out there when others are making layoffs. So you can get higher return on investment than in tight labor markets, and employees who are hired will be more appreciative and loyal, and they will be less likely to leave when the economic situation improves because you hired them in a tough economic situation. Second tip, don't go with your gut. For example, when you're interviewing a candidate and you're kind of feeling uncertain about them, don't just rely on your gut feelings alone, or you're feeling certain about them. Also, don't rely on your gut feelings alone. Gut feelings about candidates are actually a pretty poor predictor of employee success. Some employees are great at interviews and they make lousy employees. Some people are terrible at being interviewed, but they make great employees. Leaders tend to overestimate the quality of their decisions based on the interview. And that's part of overconfidence bias, which is a tendency to see our abilities as better than they are. We tend to be overconfident. Another problem is that we tend to favor those who are similar to us and offer them jobs. And this reliance on intuition leads to discriminatory outcomes because it causes us to undermine diversity in race, disability, gender, sex. So this is an issue. We prefer those like us and we prefer to not engage with those who are different from us intuitively. That's a cognitive bias known as the Horn's effect, when we dislike qualities in others that are different from ours. And halo effect is when we like qualities in others that are similar to us. So we undervalue those who are different from us and value too much those who are similar to us. To overcome this, you really need to use structured interviews. What that means is that you ask all candidates the same questions. Of course, you can ask follow-ups, but you ask them the same questions and you rate their answers. And you want to think about the ways that candidates differ from you and add additional points for these differences because you'll tend to undervalue these differences and you need to rate them and give them higher credit for the ways that they're different than you. Okay, tip 3, focus on underappreciated talent. How do you spot brilliant, underappreciated talent that others miss, which is something that you want to do? The economist Tyler Cowen said that you want to focus on groups that are typically undervalued. So that hiring underappreciated talent, typically undervalued groups, improves diversity and decision-making and financial performance. For example, women tend to be undervalued in the workforce. Despite having the same qualifications, education, and work experiences as men, they tend to be less likely to be hired for the same position. There was a study of 20 Fortune 500 companies that showed that men had quicker career progress and better salaries despite starting at the same level. Another study of 1,000 MBA graduates found that women experience bias more often than men, leading to lower pay. Okay, next tip. Put culture, vision, and strategy front and center. Focus on these when hiring. Doing so helps attract and hire the right people, and it helps you filter out those who aren't a good fit for your culture. They might be a great fit for culture elsewhere. Avoid downplaying unusual aspects of your culture if you want to have good hires. Assess culture fit and vision alignment during hiring. Ask candidates about what culture they prefer. Describe your culture and discuss any differences so that you figure out the fit. And of course, first ask them so they don't just parrot back what you're telling them. And ask candidates about their vision and strategy for your company. And then describe your actual vision and strategy. And then again, have that discussion of any differences. Treat all hires as potential future leaders regardless of whatever rank or position for which they're hired, because they might progress up. So think about that as you're making your hires. Next, be transparent with your financial situation. That's really crucial for recruitment and retention, especially in a recession. So assurances of financial stability can help retain employees, recruit the right employees, but a lack of communication leads to anxiety and people looking for jobs elsewhere. Over-communicate in multiple channel, which helps you avoid the false consensus effect, which is an assumption others share your beliefs and knowledge. So over-communicate rather than under-communicate. Next, focus on the bosses. Develop your lower and mid-level managers to retain the right employees. Research by Vistage shows that quality bosses drive satisfaction and retention, and they improve productivity and performance. That focus on the bosses will pay off regardless of the size of your company. So Vistage, for example, is for middle market companies, but let's talk about a project that Google did. Don't get really much larger than Google. And Google's study on good bosses is called Project Oxygen. And using internal company ratings, it found that high-scoring managers managers who had higher scores from employees had better retention and employee satisfaction. Good bosses means happy, balanced, and innovative employees. And a Gallup survey shows that 75% of employees resign due to a negative relationship with their supervisor. Next, tip 7, and the final tip, is that you want to boost remote and hybrid work. This is crucial for retention and recruitment. 48% of applicants prefer full-time work from home, according to a SHRM survey. So employers with a 30-minute commute, if they're asked to come into the office that they need to drive 30 minutes to, will need a 20% raise for a full-time job and a 10% raise for a hybrid job. So just keep that in mind of what candidates are actually looking for. LinkedIn found that there are about 15% of all applications on LinkedIn are for fully remote jobs, but they get about 50% of the interest from candidates. So again, pretty similar to the SHRM survey. Over 60% of candidates prefer jobs with remote work. That's a morning consult survey. And 64% of employees may quit if required to work full-time in the office, according to the ADP Institute survey. A real-world example for supporting flexible work. Trip.com did a study of hybrid work compared to full-time work. So it assigned half with staff to hybrid work and half with staff to full-time work. And Trip.com is a major travel agency. So that's people like programmers, customer service personnel, HR people, marketers. It found that hybrid work compared to full-time work led to 35% better retention and 8% more code from those engineers, programmers who were in hybrid contexts. So they had better productivity, they had much better retention if people are working in a hybrid modality, and other productivity metrics for others, non-programmers, were higher as well. University of Southern California Information Science Institute, that's one of my clients, so that's not a study. It chose a team-led flexible work setup following my advice in 2021, and they did a survey on this in 2022, which showed that 71% of employees preferred this team-led model to its previous model of 3 days in the office for everyone. And this is a team-led model where the teams decided on how often to come to the office and for what purposes for remote and hybrid work. 63% were more likely to recommend ISI to their peers because of this team-led model as compared to a 3-day-a-week model. And 70% were very satisfied with the balance of remote and in-office work. And it also helped improve recruitment and retention. So winning the war for talent in uncertain times requires avoiding 7 hiring and firing mistakes. First, be greedy. Second, don't go with your gut. 3, focus on underappreciated talent. 4, put your culture, vision, and strategy front and center. 5, be transparent with your finances. 6, focus on the bosses. And finally, boost remote and hybrid work. And that's how you will make sure to survive and thrive by hiring and retaining the best talent during uncertain economic times. Okay, I hope you've benefited from this episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out this show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show and it helps us improve the show. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.